Greetings and welcome to Black Genius. Hi, I'm Lori Lolade. I'm your host, founder of Nor Labs, Nor Press, and Nor Fest. With Black Genius, today we're doing something very new and we're interviewing an ally for our Black Genius Allies stream. So I'm excited to tell you more about Nitika Chopra, who's going to be joining us in a few moments, as well as to just give you a background again on NorPress, Black Genius, Nor Labs, and why we do this work. So I'm your founder. Nor Labs was founded in 2019 to inspire and operationalize Black liberation worldwide. And we do that by showing and curating and creating aspirational content that helps Black people see ourselves thriving. We operationalize liberation by helping organizations to maximize their genius through trainings and agile integration. We do so much more. We have films up on Portal X, portalx.space, where you can watch films from the previous Northfest and other glorious art and films that we have curated on the portal. And if you're a Black woman CEO, this is a community that you really want to be a part of and technology that you want to take advantage of because it has you in mind. So joining us today on Black Genius Allies, and I'll just say, Black Genius, was created to document the stories of the world's future Black leaders. But of course, there are non-Black people that inspire me as well. And I really wanted to create a stream that would make it possible to interview such people. And that's why we've created Black Genius Allies. And when I had the opportunity to interview Nitika Chopra, I had to jump at the chance because she thoroughly inspires me and brings me so much joy in life. And she's going to be our first Black Genius Ally. So let me just tell you a little bit about Nitika. First of all, Chronicon. She's the founder of Chronicon, a media and events company dedicated to elevating the lives of those living with a chronic illness. When I first found out about Chronicon through Desiree Peterkin Bell, I literally was crying. I was like, my face was just soaked in tears because I felt so seen. I couldn't believe that something like Chronicon existed, and I was just finding out about it. Just a platform, a beautiful, stunning, you know how I am about aesthetics, a stunning platform created for people who are suffering from chronic illness. So when I found out about Chronicon, I just thought, wow, what an amazing person to have founded this. So Nitika was diagnosed with psoriasis at the age of 10 and psoriatic arthritis at the age of 19 and lived over 17 years of her life being defined by her conditions. In 2010, she decided to take all of the lessons her health journey had taught her and use it to help others. Since the start of her entrepreneurial journey, Nitika has hosted her own TV talk show on Z Living called Naturally Beautiful, hosted over 40 events with hundreds of guests in attendance, and she's created dynamic partnerships with over 150 brands in the wellness space. After 10 years in event creation, Nitika launched Chronicon in the fall of 2019, focused on those living with a chronic illness. The event sold out, had over 2,000 live stream viewers, high-level brand sponsors, and it's been growing ever since. Since its launch, Chronicon has expanded online, and you can now download the Chronicon app right to your phone and access it anytime. The community is accessible, an accessible online space with inspiration, advocacy, and empowerment for chronically ill folks across the globe. And Chronicon is going to be happening. We're going to be talking about this once we bring Nitika on. It'll be happening May 19th in Brooklyn with a live component, a live stream component as well. So please snap your fingers, stomp your feet, and help me welcome Nitika Chopra to Black Genius Allies.
Hi. Oh my gosh.
Hi,
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for being here.
I feel so honored. I really mean that. I'm so honored to be the first person that you're interviewing as an ally. It's really such an honor. So thank you for having me in this space.
It's like the least I could do. Like I told you in our emails, when I first found out about you and Chronicon, I just was like, my heart was just like overflowing. I get emotional every time I think about it. So I'm not even going to cry on here. But
I cry every time I do it. Every time we talk about Chronicon, pretty much I cry. So we do that together.
That's real. That's real. As someone, and I was going to say this even in the intro, as someone who's lived with chronic illness for over 10 years and had such a struggle communicating about it to people. I visited so many doctors. There were so many people who really were not able to really understand. And they'll even say that autoimmune, for instance, is not even a real disease, right? I had someone tell me that they would put me on antidepressants instead of like actually, and so I wanted to talk a bit about like the experience of a chronically ill person in America and your journey, kind of transmuting your experience into a blessing for others. So just talk about like because you grew up in India before coming to the States?
No, well, my family is from India, so I'm actually first generation, and I grew up all over. I was born in Ohio, but then we moved everywhere from Cairo to Singapore, and my parents lived in Hong Kong for a long time. So I've been sort of all over, but I've been in New York for 22 years now, so I'm definitely a New Yorker. And yeah, when I was 10 years old and I was living in Ohio, in a predominantly white area, right? So I was like one of the only brown kids in my school. And that really shaped me, I think, more than I realized until I didn't really realize how much that shaped me until I was much older and I had like words for what I was experiencing. But I definitely experienced a lot of just like bullying and feeling like very othered. And that was before I even got my chronic illnesses.
Mm.
And so then when I was 10, I got psoriasis, as you mentioned. And I had it. Psoriasis is an autoimmune disease, but it is a skin disease and it sort of shows up as like scaly patches on your skin. And it can show up differently for lots of different people. So it can be maybe just in your scalp, or some people just have it in their joints or something like that, or like around a joint area, I should say. Um, but I got it from the tip of my foot to the tip of my head. And I lived like that for like 17 years, right? So think about the times when we have a pimple or we have like a scar or we have, and I'm not diminishing any of those things, right? And they frustrate us. They stress us out. We wish they would just go away. They're bothering us, all these different things. They might even be physically uncomfortable. And, hopefully within a few weeks or days or whatever, it kind of passes. And with psoriasis, yeah, that was not the case for me. And so it shaped me. It shaped me so much, Alori. And it's actually something I am so grateful for. I don't believe in like toxic positivity and just like like putting a paintbrush over everything, saying, "Oh, this was the best thing that ever happened to me," and that's it. It's nuanced, right? As we know. But it really did shape me in ways that I am very grateful for, because I think it taught me lessons about life at a very young age that, at the time I was like, why do I have to be going through this? This is awful. But as I got older, I was like, oh, wow, I see things very differently than a lot of people who are my age or, people who haven't experienced this.
Wow. So talk a little bit more because you talked about kind of being bullied before you got the diagnosis. And then what was that like for you going to school and having this like visible, because a lot of autoimmune conditions and a lot of chronic illnesses are not visible. And that's why it's really hard to get a diagnosis. But this was something that you were like, living with visibly. What was that for you like as a 10-year-old?
Yeah, I mean, I always say it's as if like you are meeting someone and your greatest wounds are exposed for them to see, right? So think about that. If you don't have a physical condition, but maybe you love someone who does and you can't really understand like why it's so hard for them or whatever. If you think about the thing that is like your core wound that you wish no one ever saw or you try to protect with everything you have, and then, like, the moment you say hello to someone, they see it basically, like, plastered across your forehead. It's just like it's devastating, actually.
Mhm.
It's
Mhm.
devastating in every moment, right? It's not like devastating one time and then you go to therapy and it's over. It's like it's devastating every time. And especially as you said, as a kid, I didn't have the coping skills. Now I can say, oh, this is what it is. And I have a blog about it. Like, here's this, listicle about like all the ways that I've transformed whatever. But I'm 42 now. So that's like, it's been a journey, to get to this place. But when I was younger, I didn't have that. I was just in the pain of it and in the suffering of it for a long time, actually.
And your family must have been incredibly supportive for you to navigate that and for such a long
Yeah. What's interesting about my family is that my parents are the most supportive, beautiful, wonderful people. Like they really are. And they have poured everything. If I ever needed something for my health specifically, I never had to ask. Like we would figure it out. We would just like figure it out somehow. But there was this emotional part, and I don't know if like you can resonate with this with how your parents are, because I think it is true for certain cultures. But culturally, like, I mean, we're not really encouraged to talk about our emotions. We're not encouraged to be vulnerable. We're not encouraged to do any of that, right? So that part was really hard because I don't think that there wasn't like these, like now there's like a therapy account on like every other TikTok account is like a therapy account or Instagram or whatever. And people are encouraged to go to therapy. And still there's a lot of stigma around it. But as a kid, people didn't really understand that like these physical things that were happening also had like pretty tremendous emotional impact, and things like not being able to focus in school, having a lot of social challenges, things like that. It all stemmed from a lot of the physical stuff I was going through, but no one really knew what to do with that or how to handle it at the time.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So you didn't even have support like within the school? Did you have like guidance counselors or anyone that was like really hands-on to help you emotionally through it?
Not really, because I think everyone was a bit of, like, over their head,
Mhm.
with it all. But what I will say is that I've been a singer since I was, like, 13, and my voice teacher, Barbara Retzko in New Jersey, who I actually just saw, like, a few months ago, she was definitely that person for me because I loved to sing. It was like, and I still feel this way. It was like the thing that I always felt very connected to God when I sing, and just from a spiritual place, not anything religious, but it really connected me to something greater than my own suffering.
Mm.
And so I would go into her office like every day, just be like, Miss Bretzko, like this is happening and that's happening. And she just always talked to me like I was the greatest version of myself. So that was really helpful. Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
So beautiful. That is so beautiful. Yeah. So I just want to kind of, help like listeners through your journey to healing. So like of course you had to have some kind of emotional support to navigate something so traumatic and so
Yeah.
tremendous. And then, actually healing and being able to manage the illness. What
Yeah.
what what tools did you use? And of course, I'm assuming you were on medication. Like what
Yeah.
was it like for you to actually manage the illness and then get to a place where you could live a little bit freer from it.
Yeah, it's healing is such a interesting word. It's such a complex word for so many people. And I know it is for me for sure. So I actually find that healing is like a state of being that you can access in any moment, right? I'm all about being in this present moment. And so to me, it isn't a destination. Although, to be fair, for the first like decade and a half of my condition, it was. It was the thing that I was constantly seeking. And I
Mm,
was desperate for it. Right. So, like, if anyone out there is listening that is on the edge, that is like, how can I get over this? I feel so alone. I hear you. And I don't just hear you, I have been you for many, many, many years.
wow.
What shifted things for me, and it's really what I try to bring to all of the work that I do now, is that, there are certain things about my body that I'm going to put control in quotes, right? Like, I can control, for the most part, eating a healthier diet or prioritizing rest, spending time with people that fill my cup rather than drain it. It's a big one for me.
Mhm.
Things like that, right? And I can try to get myself to the best doctors and all those different things. But there was this sense of sort of being put in a box, which was all of my chronic illnesses. I now have a third chronic condition from something that was triggered after getting COVID a couple of years ago. And, you know, there's this thing that happens a lot of times for folks when they get a chronic condition, a diagnosis, they sort of are put into this box and they're essentially told, now that's your limit. Now that's your ceiling.
Mm.
This is what you are. People with psoriasis only do this. They only look like this. People with psoriatic arthritis only go this far.
Mm.
People with MS, endometriosis, PCOS, asthma, diabetes, all these different things that people deal with, right? They look like this and they only do this. So what I had to do, because my condition was such a huge part of my identity, especially getting it at such a young age, I had to consciously remind myself and reprogram myself to knowing that I am worthy of having a full life.
Mm.
And that might look different than the person in my family who runs marathons and who lives a really different life than I do and can do 20 things that I can't do. My full life might look very different than that person. But
Mm.
that doesn't mean that it's not a full life. And I think there's this thing that happens, and this is getting to, my healing conversation. It's all in a part of that. There's this thing that happens that I think we take ourselves out of the equation a lot of times when we get diagnosed. I also think society takes us out of the equation. We
Mm.
are left out. We are sort of told by not being included so many things, right? So what does it look like for us to stand up and say, oh no, I know that's what you think someone with psoriasis or XYZ thing does, but I actually have both those things and I'm going to do 100 things that you never thought I could do. And
Mm.
I'm not going to let you stop me, right? The tenacity that we have to have in order to do that, it's sort of like any conversation of oppression, right? It's like, it actually makes me really upset. But
Mm.
we, as the people who are being oppressed, have to be the ones to be like, you got it totally wrong.
Mm.
It
That
makes it,
brings me
yeah,
that brings me to the question about just the medical culture in the
yes,
West,
yes,
right? So your family being from India, I'm sure
yes,
you're familiar with Ayurveda and
of course,
different natural healing practices. Which I've been on the healing journey for a long time, and I've been into the natural things for a very long
yeah,
time. And just recently, in the last year, got a bit more in-depth understanding about Ayurveda. But when I think about just the medical culture and the culture around health in the U.S., there's some things that make it very distinct from what you might see in the rest of the world. How do you like? What's your take on the medical culture in the States and what it's like for people with illness to navigate getting help?
oh, it's so disappointing. That's mostly what it is. I I have never been more aware of my privilege than when I am navigating the healthcare system. And it is for basic things, right? Like for one of the first times I really was like sort of caught off guard about the privilege that I have. The privilege meaning I'm an English speaking person. I was able to go to school, right? And like my family was able to afford an education for me that allowed me to be able to navigate systems. Like
Mm.
even just that privilege is what I'm talking about, right?
Wow.
So just to get the medication and to go through the 20, I literally have to order my medication today that I do every month, and it takes me at least 20 minutes. And that's being English being my first language and having an education and having the ability to take that 20 minutes out of my day to do that, right? I'm not working 4 jobs and like feeding a full family,
Mm.
right? So it's like I'm so aware of these things. And I think within like even just doctors, I find that even being a woman, not like, let alone being a woman of color, the moment I exhibit, and this is when I also like, I interview my doctors, because the moment I exhibit my truth and I say, I'm really anxious about this thing. I'm nervous to take this medication. I've heard all of these things. I don't understand. Like, I need you to spend the extra 3 minutes to explain this to me. It's that moment that I know they have either already written me off as an anxious woman
Mm.
or they care.
Mm.
It's really that simple. It's not much more complicated than that, right? But even that, Alori, even that is a privilege for me to then be able to say, and I hate that that's the case, for me
Mm.
to then be able to say, I just had this experience. I had to see a neurologist for this new condition, and I really didn't feel good about the first neurologist. This person is like board certified, all the things. He's on the freaking website for the disease. Okay. Okay, I am not even kidding.
Oh my
He
God.
he is on the website. Okay,
Mm,
so everyone else was like, "But why aren't you seeing Dr. So and so?" What? And I was just like, "He's not for me." Because
mm,
he just went like this with me, right? He just was like, "Okay, do this." It was not that big of a deal. Do this, 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 and this. And I was just like, "You don't see me actually. So I'm going to
mm,
have to take the extra time, spend the extra money, right? So that's like a privilege right there. It's not like I have so much money to spend, but the fact that I even have the privilege of figuring it out,
mm.
right? Like if I have to call someone in my family or I have to, so many people don't have that. So, I mean, you got me on a whole tangent. I could just go days about the privilege that we need to have in order to
Very
just like
welcome.
try to stay alive in this country. It's ridiculous.
Very welcome tangent. Very welcome tangent. So I want to dial back a little bit to
Yes.
your professional journey,
Yeah.
right? So navigating like school and becoming an adult, even with your chronic condition, how did you kind of decide like what made you, because you started out in media, as I understand it.
Yeah.
And
Well,
what
I
was
mean, I started out in my early 20s when I was really sick. I started out like really wanting to be an actor. And I guess there was this thing in me because I had sang my whole like childhood and things like that. There was this part of me that like sort of came from this place of wanting to be seen and knowing it eventually evolved into I know I have something to say.
Mm,
So which I'm so grateful for. I don't think the whole like needing to be seen and wanting to be seen really serves us long term. I think it can be a good vehicle to getting us to what we're actually meant to do, but I don't think that that's really a worthwhile like thing to go after for me personally. But yeah, I really felt like I had something to say. And I actually had like a really clear experience with God, honestly, like at a very young age when I was probably about like 15. So a few years after I had gotten sick. And it was this message that was so clear that was like, this is not about you.
mm.
And
Wow.
it stops me in my tracks every time I think about it. Because first of all, I was 15, so everything was about me. You know,
On point.
I was
Yes.
like, excuse me, we need to have a conversation because everything is about me. But also because I was going through such tremendous suffering at that point. Like
Mm.
when I tell you, my mom used to have to change my sheets every morning because I bled through them because I scratched so bad.
Ugh,
It's
Lord.
like and like when your lips crack and bleed in the winter, my entire body was like that for
Mm,
17 years, right?
mm,
So for God to tell me this isn't about you, I was like, I'm gonna need a new God to talk to. Like, can I speak to your manager? Because this is not the I don't understand. This is not computing.
mm,
But I really, truthfully, I knew that that was true. I just didn't understand what it was like, what it meant. So that sort of led me to always be looking for what is this thing? What is this thing that I apparently am supposed to be doing with this long, history of dealing with so much at such a young age? And yeah, it led me on such a journey. I thought I was supposed to be an actress. I'm a terrible actress, so I'm not supposed to be an actress, but I tried whatever. Um, you know, we got to try things when we're young, especially. Um,
mm,
and then yeah, I just had this idea to start my own online magazine and I really wanted to have my own talk show. I think I realized like being myself was more what I was meant to do. And I started this online magazine, and the idea was that someday someone was going to look at it and see that the content and the experts and me on camera, like it could be a talk show one day.
mm, mm,
And 3 years later, ZTV, owned by Asia TV, was, yeah, they reached out to me and gave me my own show. And then from there, I was on QVC with the skincare company Fresh. I was doing a lot of stuff in beauty, and I loved it. But it wasn't like I wasn't talking to like the people that I was meant to talk to.
mm,
I was talking to people that self love was like a nice to have, but it wasn't the person like you and I have talked about already, like that's like at the edge,
mm,
right? Is like really struggling with their body. And I know that person more than I know anything, right? So I had to kind of reevaluate after a little while.
Wow. And so that was how you sort of tell us about like the birth of Chronicon, like the moments when you were like, okay, I'm starting to get this clarity. This is what it is, and really beginning to like crystallize that.
Yeah, well, I will say it was after a lot of darkness.
Mhm.
And I think it's so important to say that out loud, right? I probably around 2016, there was a new president in this country. The racial reckoning and uprising was louder than it had been publicly, at least before. And I just felt like, what am I doing selling eye cream? Like, I just don't, like, I am really good at this, but like, I am not changing anyone's life by doing this.
Mhm.
And I never, as I kind of said, like, I never did anything that I didn't like or that wasn't genuine, but it just wasn't the thing. So I went through a couple of years of just so much darkness and feeling like, what is it? I couldn't see it for the life of me. And the year before I finally decided, or really like the year of, I did this exercise, which I love sharing with people because I think when you're lost, it can be really helpful and it's free. So, so when you're in between jobs, that can be really helpful. But I did this exercise where I would go to different events or I'd meet different people, have meetings, whatever, and I would practice introducing myself as a different part of myself every time. So what I mean by that, it sounds weirder than it is, but what I mean by that is I would be like, I'm Nitika, I'm a talk show host. I'm Nitika, I'm a blogger. I'm Nitika, I'm a chronic illness advocate. I'm Nitika, I'm a beauty spokesperson, right? All those things are true, but every time I introduced myself as a chronic illness advocate, I had the most moving experiences and conversations ever.
Wow.
And I didn't experience that when I told people I was a beauty expert.
Mm.
I just didn't. I was like, every time someone would say, oh my gosh, my mom has such and such thing. Or, oh my gosh, my husband, he's been dealing with this thing and it's been so hard. I don't know how to support him, so on and so forth. And so that led me to start to open up about chronic illness and my journey. It led me to bringing it to the forefront more. And eventually, about a year later, I was at a conference and thought of the idea for Chronicon specifically, which kind of pulled together the events I had already been doing, just doing it a bit differently, and the content and all of these things. So I'd already had like all the ingredients. It was just more of like baking it into a different cake. So so then I started Chronicon and launched it in 2019, and here we are.
What did it mean for you early on, before the advent of Chronicon? What did it mean for you to be a chronic illness advocate? Like, what was that tangibly?
I gotta be honest, like the first thing that comes up for me is like, it was shaky. It was shaky to be a chronic illness. I want to say there was a part of me that was almost like low key, like embarrassed because
Mhm.
no one was talking about it. And so I was just like, and the other thing that was really tricky for me was I had spent so much time not making chronic illness my identity,
Mm.
right? So here I am. I'm supposed to just talk about it all the time now, right? And so that was really tricky for me.
Okay.
And I didn't know how to navigate that for a while. But the thing is that it also was real. It was really honest. And so it felt like, as much as I had all of these complicated feelings around it, it also felt like I could sort of relax and be relieved. Um, and yeah, and I was really grateful for that because I didn't have to pretend anymore. And I could go right to the heart of things, which is like, I love to do that. I do like, I'm introverted. I do not like to have small talk. I like to just go right into things. So it also meant that I didn't have to pretend. I didn't have to like talk about beauty as an access point to self-love if you might have a chronic illness. Like, I could just be like, you know what I mean? Which is like literally what I was doing for years. I could just be
Mm.
like, hey, all of you out there, the hundreds of millions of you that are dealing with this too, like, let's chat, you
Mm.
know? Yeah.
Let's do that pitch right now too, because like for anybody who's watching this,
Yeah.
who has a chronic illness, what is your message for them? What is your personal message, and what is your message through Chronicon for folks who are living with chronic illness?
Yeah, it's something I talk about a lot, and it's actually the first panel that we have at Chronicon this year. And the panel is titled The Audacity to Thrive.
Mm.
And it's because so much of what I said earlier is true. Like, we are often told by so many different things, whether it's the systems with our doctors or our families or just so many different things, that we don't really have the right to thrive the way that others do. And I just think that is complete BS. I just could not disagree more. And so, with everything that we're doing with Chronicon, it is about infusing that into people's lives and into people's spirits, and like, again, doing it how you want to do it. The way you thrive is not going to be the same way that I thrive. And that's beautiful, right? Because whether you have a chronic illness or not, I think that's a beautiful exploration to see,
Mm.
like, what are the things that I love? What are the ways that I'm holding myself back? What can I go for that, like, I've been assuming that is not available to me? So
Mm.
I think that's the biggest thing. And thriving, people talk about thriving a lot these days. So, it might be like an overused term for some people, but I think it's really allowing yourself to live the fullest life you could possibly live. We don't know, I mean, what this world is going to lead us to. We don't know anything, nothing is promised to us. And when you're dealing with your body in the ways that so many of us are, we know that on such a deep level. So, like, how can I go for more for myself now? And it doesn't always mean like more and thriving. It doesn't always mean that you're like running and you're doing all these big things and you're like, go, 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 go. No, sometimes thriving for me means I notice that I'm feeling a little tired. So instead of like trying to have it all together, I'm going to wrap myself in a blanket and do my emails on the couch. Do you know
Mm.
what I mean? Like, it doesn't always mean this huge, extravagant thing. It also means I'm going to go for it and create Chronicon. I'm going to go for it and like connect with people and do interviews or whatever. But it also means I'm going to take it easy today and I'm going to let myself know that it's okay to not be on all the time? So I think all of that is just super important.
That's so on point, and you just have me thinking. So, like I've mentioned, I have dealt with a chronic illness for many years, and I have a social enterprise, Norlabs, all of this, right?
Yes.
And day to day, what that can look like is literally what you said, whatever I can do from my phone in my bed, right? I just want to kind of bring up and allow space to talk about grace, right? So,
Yeah.
it sounds like you really mastered, or you're mastering this art of grace for yourself and for others living with chronic illness. And for those who are not familiar, right? So a lot of the challenge for me has been coming up against people who just don't understand, right? Because we are in this grind culture in
Mhm.
the West. And so achievement and accomplishment, thriving is often associated with how much you produce. I'm Nigerian. You talked about, the immigrant background, and the emotional connection. And I write about this, and it's always something that I'm navigating and dealing with and talking about and teaching about. Is there's so many levels to our our sort of cultural identity,
Yeah.
right? As it may be tied into what we are able to produce, how hard we are able to work, how much we are able to acquire,
Yeah.
right? And so it poses a major conflict from my perspective, right? When we are striving for these major accomplishments,
Yeah.
even in bodies that are holding us, in such a way that says rest, in such a way that says be easy. What does grace look like, you know, for people with chronic illness and for people who are engaging with people with chronic illness?
Yeah, it's such a beautiful question. I know for me, with my chronic illness journey, it has just looked like, I almost call it like self-trust is sort of a way that I would define it. And I think people have a funny relationship with trust sometimes. They don't really understand the divine roots that are in the word trust. It's not just a human thing. It's like really trusting, right? So like knowing that if I have 50 emails in my inbox, but I have like one spoon left, which is like an energy system that a lot of chronic illness folks use, or I have like 10% of my battery left in my own personal tank, I have to trust and know that the 3 emails I was able to get to are enough, and like the other, whatever, 47, it's going to be okay if I get to them tomorrow or by the end of the week, and just understand it. And I'm constantly navigating that. I'm constantly like, what absolutely has to be done today? Okay, cool. These 4 things, like I really do need to get these done today because there's like other people waiting. Great. I'm not going to worry about anything else. And it's really hard because like, yeah, I live in a family system where like, I'll say something like, I just got a huge partnership, or like, I just got this really cool deal. And the first thing, my parents will go into a straight panic. Okay. I don't understand why a joyful thing like elicits like fear, but it is so ingrained in a lot of our cultures, especially I think for immigrants. Like I feel like they risk everything to come here. And then it's like any risk after that is like terrifying and just not on the table.
That's so
you know?
real.
And I really have seen that. And so, yeah, so a lot of times I'll tell my parents really big news and they'll just be like, but like, when are they going to actually give you the money? Is there any way you can ask for more money? Like literally, just because they want me to like be okay. It's like, it's not coming from any evil place, but they're like terrified that it's like not going to be enough, that I'm not going to be okay. And so my practice has just been like, this is actually really great. Like the fact that I got this deal is actually a really big deal. So like, I'm okay with just being excited about this for right now. I'm trying not to laugh as I say it because it's like so uncomfortable for all of us, because they're just like, Nitika? It's like as if I've said something like, sacrilegious or something. And I'm just like, no, it's actually like, what's the truth right now? But that's, and I'm doing a lot of nervous system work right now, which is like been really helping me practice being in the present moment and just really understanding like, this is what we have. Right. And like really, really having grace inside of that moment, I think is really important. So yeah, that was also another tangent, but I think grace for me is a divine experience for sure.
Do you have a lot of siblings?
I have one brother who does run marathons. Yes, he's very smart, very much more like, he was an investment banker and then became a doctor.
Wow. So he's checking off like 10 boxes with each career.
All the boxes. And yeah, and I have never been either of those things. I've just followed my heart, so it's very different. But yes, I have an older brother.
So I asked that because, I'm thinking of that landscape, that cultural landscape, that familiar landscape.
Yeah.
And when, one of the reasons why I call you an ally and for you guys watching why I call Nitika an ally is because one, just the way that the language of Chronicon, everything, because I perused the site and then I applied for scholarships, right? And it was so welcoming to me as someone who, didn't have the capacity to like pay for membership and pay for a ticket and all these things. And it said, if you need this, we got you, right? The language was like, we got you, like, come home, like, we see you, we love you, we appreciate you, come home. And there was a question on the scholarship form that asked, what have you gained from your chronic illness, right? And, like literally that whole like scholarship application just like bawling. And so that question, really it took me back, it took me to this deeper place of like gratitude, right? Which has been part of the journey in navigating this, this health challenge. It's been like, okay, what is the message here? Why, like, what is the benefit to myself and others
Yeah.
for experiencing these challenges, right? And what came up for me, and which I have noticed have come up for a lot of women around me who've navigated chronic illness, it has to do with a spiritual and intergenerational kind of need, right?
Mhm.
Because of the health challenges that I've had to really go deeper with God. I've had to really ask questions that on a surface experience of spirituality or of religion, you don't really ask because you just follow the rules and you do the things and you say, okay, I'm following the rules, I'm doing the things, it's got to work, right? And I'm just going to keep on following the rules and doing the things until it works, no matter how long it takes, right? But when you are, deeply intuitive and deeply curious, you keep asking. You keep asking for more clarity and more information. And in that journey, you receive insights, you receive, you have experiences that are multidimensional, and that open you up to a reality that says, this is not just about you here in this, in this generation, in this timeline. There is a whole continuum of bodies and spirits and people who your healing, liberates and elevates. And so I was just curious for you because I know that, I don't know how you practice spirituality. I know you've talked about being deeply spiritual, but I'm curious for you, like if that resonates and how you kind of connect the experience of chronic illness and the spiritual dimension of that with like these intergenerational things that we navigate.
You're gonna make me cry for like the fourth time.
Please cry. I love it when people cry.
Okay, I've already cried like 4 times. I don't know if you've seen, but I've already cried. This is why I didn't wear makeup for our interview, 'cause I knew I was gonna cry. Um, there's so much I could say about that. Yeah, I mean, just to speak to just what you brought up about the scholarships, it is I actually mean it when I say it's, like, really important to me that if people want to be a part of what we're doing at Chronicon, I cannot wait to welcome them. Like, and I really, really mean that, and I think the thing that people don't always realize about Chronicon or myself until they get the chance to speak with us or connect with us more is that I purposely charge for everything with Chronicon to break the narrative that when you're sick, you aren't allowed to make money. Right? So that was a conscious choice. But I personally do not care if that money comes from a huge corporation or that money comes from an individual. I would actually rather it come from a huge corporation, which is what I'm constantly working towards. So we give away about half of our membership as well as about half of our tickets to people who can't afford it. Because I have been that person. And like I needed help with things like this. There were so many times where like it's less than $1 a day to be a member at Chronicon, but between people's insulin and their MRIs and their doctor's bills and their families, it's still something. And also we're not taught to invest in ourselves in these ways, so I think that's also a barrier, right? So I just wanted to say that like if anyone out there is listening, like please apply for a scholarship. We would love to welcome you.
Chronicon.co,
Yes,
right? Yes.
chronicon.co, yeah.
Chronicon.co. Yeah.
Yes. But yeah, I think for the intergenerational thing, it's been a huge, huge part of my journey. My relationship with God really took took off, I guess you could say, or deepened when I got sick. And my mom always is like, I don't know whose child you are because my parents are like not religious, like they're not even really spiritual. My mom has like that intuitive knowing about things, but other than that, they're not really that way. And I talk about God a lot. I love talking about God. And my practice with God is a lot of times through people. Like being with you, Lori, I know I'm sitting with God.
Ooh, you're gonna make me cry, girl.
It's true, right? Because I can see you and I can see you in all of your beauty and your grace and your wisdom. And I know that like this is God. So it's a practice for me And even like in Chronicon, when we have like our events, there have been times in starting this community that we have with our app where there's like, it's like I'm a businesswoman just like anyone else. I'm starting this from the ground up, right? So there have been times when there was like 4 people in the Zoom. I'm just like, okay, us 4 people. Okay, God, I'm showing up. You keep telling me to show up. I don't really know. Like I thought there's supposed to be 4,000 people, but okay, we'll show up.
Yeah.
And by the end, someone has opened me up in the most beautiful way. We have really moved something that matters, like on a cellular level. We have gotten to connect in ways that are going to transcend the moment that we're having right now in a way that really, really is going to change someone's life, actually. Right. So I know God is in that Zoom with me every single time we do an event. So in terms of the generational stuff, my mind is trying to like wrap its head around how do I even talk about this? But in my family in particular, we have a lot of women on my mom's side of the family that have all had autoimmune diseases. And one of the other messages that I got from God at a young age, I've gotten 2 really, really, really clear messages from God. And one of them was the one I shared with you before about this is not about you. And then the other one was this stops with you.
Chills.
Right. And I was like, so do I have to die? I was like,
You're not serious.
I was like, what are you saying? Like, I was just, listen, God and I can laugh. We can laugh together. But I was just like, what does that mean? Like, what does that even mean? I was 17 when I got that message. And my mom had just been diagnosed with celiac disease. And we thought she was going to die because we couldn't figure out what it was. This was like 20 plus years ago or whatever. So it's just been a whole journey. And I would say, yeah, there's a knowing that I have that there's been something in my family. The disease that I just got last year is a really rare neuromuscular disease that I got after I basically got it the week that my grandmother passed, and she had this disease. I've never heard of anyone else having it. And she had it, and I got it the week she died. If that isn't some trippy God shit, I don't know what is, right? Because that is a wild thing. So it feels like a message to me that's much bigger than I can even totally understand, So yeah, so I will say that there's a lot there, but yeah.
Wow. I know we could do this forever. Just a few words about what you're most excited about for Chronicon and like what you're excited for people to experience. May 19th, Chronicon in Brooklyn and online for members. Members get a discounted ticket, and but non-members can attend as well.
Okay. Yeah, everyone's invited. And one of the things that I really think is important to say about Chronicon, especially this first one after, like, since the start of the pandemic, I should say, it's important that we show up. And I think that's something that, it's just so much bigger than me. It's so much bigger than even like all the amazing speakers that we have who are just incredible. It's so much bigger than each individual person. It really is about how can we show up to show the media, to show industries, to show corporations that we actually matter. And we have a voice that is ready to be heard, and we are smart and beautiful and kind and cool and all of these things. And the fact that you have been sidelining us for so long needs to stop. And like, we're here to show you how to do that. So that is really what Chronicon is about. It's one day, but it's really like a fully packed, beautiful day. There's nourishing food. The gift bag is bananas. And we also have a virtual gift bag option for people who are joining us virtually, which we'll be sharing soon. And it's just going to be the most incredible day. Masks are required. So for folks who are nervous about their immune system, masks are required. And then we're also asking people to have like a rapid test, a negative rapid test before entering, that they do on their own and just like take a picture of. So yeah, we're doing everything we can, to keep everybody safe. And yeah, it's going to be an incredible day. So
What does self-care look like for you? Because I'm imagining how hard you must be working to bring Chronicon to life, right? So there's like the day-to-day of like managing the community and
yeah.
then like the intensity of launching the event. What does self-care look like for you? You talked a little bit about, taking time and being graceful with yourself, but I'm even curious about like your practices, like those little things that you do for yourself to make sure that like Nitika is good and she's recharged.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, that's something I was actually just thinking this morning, like, I'm super proud of myself that I've been able to maintain a level of self-care while doing this event. Because I think in the past, I definitely would have been more frazzled or like frayed at the ends a bit more. But my self-care has been like a top priority for me. So it's simple things like I work out pretty regularly, and that's honestly mostly to just build my muscle strength back after last year. So I'm working out like 5 days a week and usually in the morning. And again, it's like really because it's like really helps my overall health. And then I also have been doing this like nervous system work that I kind of mentioned. So I meet with that person like twice a week. And I do consider that part of my self-care. I feel like part of those kinds of things are the easiest things to be like, I'll see you after Chronicon. Like, I don't have time for this, But in the middle of my work day, I'm just like, sorry, I have a session from like this time to this time and I will not miss it. And I also have been really prioritizing like just trying to have a little bit more fun because I can be just in my room, in my apartment, just looking at my computer all day. And even in small ways, like I have friends that live in my neighborhood, and I'm just like at the end of a long day, like, hey, do you want to go for a little walk or do you want to get dinner? So just trying to like actively pursue things that are outside of work. All of those things matter. And then, yeah, I like to just like be organized. Like that to me is self-care. And yeah, just like in every moment, try to be in the present moment as much as I can.
What does fun look like for you? You mentioned like, taking walks. Is that like you're geeking out? If you were just being a kid and just like, geeking out on something that brought you so much joy, what would that be?
Yeah, I really love just like being with my favorite people. That honestly like makes me so happy. So being at like dinner with a friend or lunch with a friend or something like that, trying a new restaurant. Like I love trying new places. I live in Brooklyn, so it's like an easy place to try like new restaurants. And I live by the water in Williamsburg. So yeah, just like walking along the water is so nice. But I just think those simple things, I don't need to do anything. Like I'm pretty low key. But just stuff like that just makes me like connection, I think is the thing that I find like the most nourishing and the most fun. So ways that I can do things to connect with others is like always really, really exciting to me.
Beautiful. And that brings me to my last question on
Yeah.
what liberation means to you. So usually on this podcast, we ask, what does Black liberation mean to you, right?
Mm,
And being an ally and thinking about liberation as like a global experience as well as a personal experience. What does that word mean to you? What is a vision of liberation that you tap into?
yeah, when you asked me that, the first thing that came to mind was like me with all like everyone, like all of us being able to go where we need to go together.
Mm,
To me, that's what liberate like I see all of these people and we're all like arm in arm,
mm,
and to me, that is what liberation means. It's like not forgetting that we're all connected
mm,
and we're like in this together, whether you want to admit it or not, like
mm.
we are. So like how can we make that experience of being in this together one where we all get to have progress and we all get to move forward, not just one person. So to me that's comes up when you ask me that.
That's beautiful. This has been such an honor and a pleasure and so
Yeah.
soul nourishing. So
Me
thank you,
too.
Nitika.
Yeah,
Thank
thank
you
you for
those
having
who
me.
are watching. We appreciate you. Thank you for being part of the NorPress community, the Nor Labs community. If you are not yet part of the community and you're watching this, go to norpress.org/join. Go to portalx.space, learn more about Portal X and all of the glorious things that we're bringing to you. Join our newsletter and just make sure that you stay abreast and subscribe, like do all the things and share this with somebody who has a chronic illness, someone who loves someone who has a chronic illness, and let's just keep educating and showing love to one another. Thank you so much, and we'll see you soon. Bye.